territories are in fact, in a certain way, demarcations of particular limits. It's as much as sometimes we want to think that the territory is a natural construct, it's always a cultural one. And so a territory is always represented through a map in that regard. So the map of Marghera is a map that it has been constructed through the hundreds and thousands of years that the site has been represented through different maps. Part of the studio has consisted in really looking into Marghera, not only today, but throughout its own history, through the history of representation, so through the history of the territories that one can construct. So a territory can be a cultural one, a digital one, an industrial one, a political one, and so as such, territories are always constructs. What it is interesting about Marghera is that, in fact, it really uses a multiplicity of narratives to construct itself. And the movement between territory and landscape, I think it has to do with the transition within the architectural field that really try to understand the shift, the artificialization of that territory into something that was more design, if one wants. So the movement between territory and landscape perhaps is the degree of design that a territory carries, yet at the same time I would argue that in fact the identification of a territory is already an act of design. And part of the studio has been to really look into the territory of Marghera as something that is historically a lot deeper than the one that we see when we actually visit the site. And as a landscape, again, it carries these multiplicities of landscapes that we sometimes do not see nor perceive, yet at the same time we have to construct, and for that we need to find the territory. So what is interesting about the territory is that it engages sometimes way beyond the boundaries of a particular landscape. So I think the distinction is perhaps one more, is more semantic and less of an intrinsic one. So I would like to know, to the person who asked the question, who comes first, the landscape or the territory, or the territory and the landscape? But I would say that while a landscape does not necessarily have to have structures of power necessarily associated to them, territory always has geopolitical, economical implications. But I think in the last few years we have been using both interchangeably. So the way in which Marghera is being defined is through the hybridization of many words and concepts that we carry. And if I was to choose 5, probably would be all of those 12 projects that we're going to be doing in a continuous sentence. So mixed city, public, private, fringe, social, restart, tourism, black trophy, and water pollution, and so on. So those 5 words, one can cut them whatever one wants, mostly because Marghera is a place that has a lot of different elements that we can identify, yet at the same time the idea of how does one intervene in that territory is about how does one create adjacencies between those conceptual or ideological territories to construct a landscape that we still don't know.